Okay, back in the very beginning, Sally was our first presenter, and she presented the neurotransmitter melatonin. So we're going to go back to that a little bit, where it's one of the monoamines. And melatonin, a lot of us are familiar with because of its association with sleep. So melatonin is considered a neurohormone, and it's secreted by the pineal gland. So if you remember when we looked at the brain from the inside, here we can see here's the anterior and here's the posterior. Here this large gray area is the corpus callosum. Here we can see the thalamus, and right behind this thalamus we can see the pineal gland. It's going to secrete melatonin, and it's going to have lots of different roles both within the brain and mostly in the peripheral nervous system. So there are melatonin receptors, and there are also some secretions in the peripheral tissue of melatonin, which include organs such as the ovaries. There's some in the intestinal tract, and there's some in various blood vessels. So we're going to see some other applications of melatonin in different areas like that. The main thing that melatonin is associated with is this idea of regulating our sleep-wake cycle, or regulating circadian rhythms. Now, the SCN is the suprachiasmatic nucleus, and this is also a little cluster of cell bodies in the brain that has a huge role really in our sleep-wake cycle, but a lot of other cycles that happen in a 24-hour period. It also has a role in use of energy, or energy metabolism. And interestingly, melatonin has been associated with inhibition of oxidative stress, which is something that is not very good for us, and we will maybe get into a little bit on that coming up in the next section. So melatonin, you can go to the grocery store, you can go to health food stores, and you can see it on the shelves. So if we take exogenous melatonin, so as opposed to endogenous, the ones that our bodies make versus exogenous, it has an effect on the body, and one of them is that it causes a decrease in body temperature, and it causes more fatigue and a decrease in motor activity. So that kind of makes sense, because when you think about kind of getting ready for sleep, this is being more inactive in multiple ways, having a lower body temperature as response. Melatonin is affiliated with those things. Deficiency of melatonin, however, as we're all aware, it is due to light exposure. So melatonin, the release of melatonin it has its own cycle, and it's related to the day-night cycle. We have extended our daytime by using electric lights and looking at our computers and our various electronics, and so we're kind of messing up the normal secretion of melatonin by doing that. And so if we aren't getting enough melatonin just naturally released, then what we're going to see is problems with concentration and fatigue, and that concept of brain fog, just being kind of fuzzy in the brain. If you take a lot of exogenous melatonin, though, it has side effects. So it's not a good idea to just start downing this stuff if you're having trouble sleeping. You want to be very careful with how you ingest some of these neuropeptides, or because of how they can have other effects on the body outside of just the one you would expect. So that's melatonin. We're going to go on now and talk a little bit about Emily's presentation of another monoamine, in this case serotonin. Serotonin, a lot of us are familiar with too, because it has some associations with things. Serotonin is abbreviated 5-HT. And it's for that 5-hydroxytryptamine. That's its chemical name. So sometimes you'll see it written as 5-HT. Sometimes you'll see it written as serotonin. But the cell bodies for serotonin are in an area called the Raphe nuclei, and Raphe means midline. And the fibers are the neurons that then project from the raphe nuclei. In other words, the axons that are coming from there. They're called serotonergic. And they go all over the place. Serotonin is involved with sleep, again, with mood, sexual behavior, and anxiety. And people know about serotonin a lot because of antidepressants, which many of them have been developed to increase the presence of serotonin in the synaptic cleft. In other words, to restrict its ability to be taken back into the presynaptic cell. And those are called SSRIs, or selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. And so by using those, people have noted that for some people who have some clinical need for an increased serotonin level, it seems to help them with depression. Here's the picture of serotonergic pathways in the brain. Here's the raphe nuclei. You can see there's a number of them here. They're found along here in the midbrain area, which the term mesencephalic means sort of that middle. Mes means middle, right? Encephalic has to do with the brain. So some of these serotonergic neurons are going to project to areas like the hypothalamus, to the basal ganglia, which, if you remember, has something to do with movement, and to the cortex. Then we have some the other, here's some raphe nuclei that are located in the brainstem, and they have some projections that go down the spinal cord as well as the cerebellum. Some of these projections are going to go to the hippocampus. So this is an association of serotonin with learning and memory. So those are some pathways and some activities of these two neurotransmitters, serotonin, or 5-HT, and melatonin.